Welcome back for another episode of Disturbing and Controversial Subreddits, a series where I explore the dark side of Reddit. In this video, we'll cover the immobile and gainers subreddits, which are communities for people who are interested in feederism, some of whom, as the title suggests, hope to become immobile one day. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon and a PayPal, so if you're interested in supporting the channel, feel free to check those out, links will be in the description. You can also leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will contain discussions of topics that some might find distressing. Viewer discretion is advised. For obvious reasons, I've hidden the names of users whose posts feature in this video, and have covered any faces that are shown in images, in an attempt to conceal the identity of the members of these communities. If you choose to visit these subreddits yourself, please do not harass anyone you come across. Before we delve into the subreddits, it might be useful to provide some context on what gaining and feederism is. According to Phoebe, a social network and community dedicated to feederism, a feedee is defined as men or women who like the idea or physical act of growing bigger, fatter, and or rounder. It's an orientation, sort of like being straight or bi. Feedees come in all shapes and sizes, and their fantasies, goals, and ideal partners vary all the way from just a little pudge to supersized territory. We're a diverse bunch, there is no one way to be a feedee. Some members on this site have put on or are putting on serious amounts of weight, some are still considering doing so, or waiting for a better time in their lives. Some may never actually gain themselves, but find satisfaction in padding, bloating, or inflating. Feedee is typically a label used in the straight community. In the gay community, feedees are typically called gainers. There's no wrong way to be a feedee, so just follow your heart. Stomach. As you can maybe infer from that definition, the gainers subreddit mostly consists of gay men, with some posts from women, and users on the immobile subreddit mostly seem to be straight. Many of the photos on there are posted by women, and the users praising these women in the photos tend to be men, though there are also numerous photos posted by male feedees too. It's worth noting that the definitions of feeder and gainer vary slightly depending on who you ask, as some would class a feedee as anyone who enjoys aspects of feederism, like being fed or overeating, but isn't necessarily trying to gain weight, and would use the term gainer to describe someone who is actively trying to get bigger. Some use the term maintainer to describe someone who is a feedee and has gained some weight, but for one reason or another, health-related or otherwise, is not currently trying to gain more weight. Phoebe defines feeders as men or women who like the idea or physical act of helping someone else grow bigger. Feeders may be any size, fat or thin, and some feeders also identify as feedees. Feeders exist along a wide spectrum, from people who just want to cook for someone and provide moral support, to those who enjoy forcing a feedee to eat copious amounts. This is always a consensual act. Feeder is typically a label used in the straight community. In the gay community, feeders are typically called encouragers. Again, there's no wrong way to be a feeder, so keep an open mind. In both communities, there are also admirers who admire the act of gaining but don't participate in gaining themselves. For simplicity's sake, I'll use feeder and feedee as blanket terms going forward, feeder referring to anyone who enjoys feeding another person and helping them gain weight, feedee referring to anyone who enjoys overeating or being fed, regardless of whether they are actively trying to gain weight or not. In addition to the occasional text post on the immobile and gainers subreddits, which might be someone describing their fantasies, or someone claiming to be immobile talking about their lifestyle, there are many photos, some posted by users of themselves and others of BBW models. As these are fetish subreddits, there are plenty of nudes, but many just focus on the stomach or show someone clothed who is bedbound or eating, etc. Despite the immobility subreddit's name, not everyone on there intends to become immobile. Some certainly plan to one day and post photos of their progress, alongside descriptions of their current level of mobility and how it has reduced over time. It seems that for others, there may be an aspect of role-playing involved. To them, the idea of becoming mobile is hypothetically appealing, but impractical. Once an individual becomes immobile, it's extremely difficult to turn back, as exercise is almost impossible, and after maintaining the eating habits necessary to get to that point, one would have developed an addiction to food that would be very hard to kick. If an immobile feedee was in a relationship with a feeder, they would be almost totally reliant on the feeder, who would have to take care of them and probably provide for them financially too, so it would be a huge commitment that would require a lot of trust. So what are the motives behind feederism? It varies from person to person, and contrary to popular belief, it's not always a sexual thing. It often is, and parallels can be drawn between feederism and BDSM in that regard, as there is often a dominant and submissive partner. Each can be either a feeder or feedee. When the feedee is submissive, they are often force-fed by the feeder. This is consensual role-playing though, and when they're dominant, they might engage in activities like sitting on a feeder, preventing them from moving. Some people make a career out of feederism as a kink. For example, feeders might hire a feedee to feed or perform certain acts, or some pay to watch feedees eat large meals on webcam. There are categories of the adult entertainment industry dedicated to feederism too. If you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you'll know this isn't the first paraphilia I've covered. What really fascinates me about them is the psychology behind them. As with most behaviour, there are a few different theories that could explain it. As already mentioned, it could be related to BDSM, and another that I found particularly interesting was derived from a study that was influenced by the suggestion that most paraphilias are exaggerated manifestations of normative and functional mate selection preferences. 30 participants, 15 male and 15 female, none of whom identified themselves as feeders or feedees, were shown neutral and feeding still images while listening to audio recordings of neutral and feeding stories. While participants did not genitally respond to the feeding stimuli, both genders rated said stimuli as more arousing than neutral stimuli. I think the researchers were onto something here. It's certainly not unheard of for food brands to market their products in a somewhat erotic way. For example, there are plenty of Magnum adverts that show attractive women biting into the ice cream. I don't get how the teeth aren't too sensitive to do that, but anyway. In general, it seems to be relatively common that given the right context, people will find watching people eat, or even feeding someone, somewhat appealing, so it makes sense that feederism could be an exaggerated extension of that. Some members of the community don't gain that kind of gratification from it though, and it's more of a romantic or even a platonic situation. For a feedee to allow a feeder to feed them so much food that they put on a significant amount of weight, even to a point of becoming immobile, that's a huge act of submission that sometimes goes beyond the kink, and requires rapport on an emotional level too, creating a special kind of bond, I guess. I've heard a theory before that sometimes people who are overweight almost feel more comfortable like that because it's like a shield, for lack of a better term. For example, I remember watching a documentary a while ago in which someone who was overweight had been abused as a child, and felt that if they put on so much weight, they'd no longer be appealing and it would protect them from being abused again. If someone was consciously aware of that and purposefully put on weight for that reason, it arguably wouldn't be feederism by definition, but it is possible that that mentality could unconsciously manifest into a feederism kink for a feedee. In a situation like that, a feedee may gain satisfaction that is of a psychological nature as opposed to sexual. It might give them a sense of comfort and perhaps even be cathartic for them. As for the feeder, knowing that they are giving the feedee what they want might feel good to them, kind of like a friend giving another friend a gift. Obviously, it must go deeper than that because the ramifications are much more significant, and being a feeder requires much more dedication than simply giving someone a present, but perhaps the feeder gains a deep sense of satisfaction from feeling like they are helping the feedee. As with any kink and many interests in general, there is potentially a dark side of this. It goes without saying that there are significant health risks of being overweight, so I'm not going to spend time detailing those. Members of these communities are well aware of the risks and choose to continue on their journeys regardless. You're entitled to your own opinion on that, but ultimately, these people are adults who can make decisions for themselves, so it's not really anyone else's right to tell them what they should and shouldn't do, providing they aren't affecting anyone but themselves. Both the immobile and gayness subreddits are mostly for sharing photos and text posts regarding the fantasy of feederism. However, I did come across a couple of similar subreddits that focus more on the discussion of it, such as Fat Admirer Talk, which provides some further insight. One post I found on there got me thinking about how someone could potentially unwillingly end up in a feederism relationship. It was titled, "I'm fat, like about 200 pounds, and literally I've never had a man who made me feel confident or sexy. Seeing how you men love us curvy girls makes me feel so much more confident. I'm sure one day I will find a man who loves my curves." As someone who has been overweight when I was younger, not anywhere near 200 pounds, but still a decent bit bigger than the majority of the people I knew of my age at the time, I can totally empathise with the feeling of insecurity and lack of confidence that comes with it. I can only imagine that probably not getting a huge amount of attention from men in everyday life, finding a community where people find you really attractive and are willing to shower you with attention would be great. It'd boost your confidence significantly, and you might feel like you finally belong somewhere. And that's a positive thing in some ways. Everyone deserves to feel attractive, and being overweight shouldn't mean that you're treated with less respect than anyone else. However, this woman's post does not imply that she is a feedee. In fact, I had a quick look at her post history to see if I could find anything that might suggest that, and there's one post on a different subreddit where she's asking for dieting advice because she wants to lose 50 pounds. This concerns me because she implies that she is insecure about her weight, she doesn't want to be overweight, and yet she's finding solace among people who will encourage her to eat more and get bigger. It kinda reminds me of situations Tammy from 1000 Sisters has been in. If you haven't seen it, it's a reality show documenting the lives of two sisters, Tammy and Amy, whose combined weight was 1000 pounds in the first season. Amy was more successful in her weight loss journey than Tammy, who continued to gain weight, and throughout the course of the show, she had been involved with a number of men, seemingly feeders, who encouraged her to gain even more. Tammy does not appear to be a feedee. Although she struggles to lose weight and is nearing immobility, it seems that she does want to lose weight, but of course it would be very difficult for someone of her size. From what I've seen, the feederism community places a lot of importance on consent, so it's important to remember that while situations like this are certainly worrying, they are not representative of the community as a whole. I decided to reach out to a few Reddit users who had posted on the immobile subreddit with hopes of gaining insight into the phenomenon. A couple of them politely declined to answer questions due to fear that they'd be harassed as a result, however a couple of people accepted. Both individuals were happy for me to mention their usernames, but please do not try to find them on Reddit to harass them. Here's my conversation with the user Girl Named Spike. Would you describe yourself as a feedee? If so, can you elaborate a little on what that means to you and what attracts you to the lifestyle? I need you to know that being a feedee and being a gainer are two very different things. I have to prerequisite this by admitting that I am asexual. I professionally model, and there were almost no plus-size models in 2010 with a stomach and arms and fat in the areas that people tend to get fat outside of their lady lumps. I would love to be fed, but I haven't been besides a few times. I can say I am a feedee, but mostly people sadly want gainers, aka people who are into getting and growing bigger and gaining mass amounts of weight. I think I got into the lifestyle when people mocked my lipedema, which is in my stomach and arms, and it spread in their communities, and that is how I found out about it. For me though, it has helped my ED. I would go a week without eating at times, and being around other fat people who have positive emotions with food helped me realise it is not an evil thing and has helped my self-image. So if you're asexual, I assume feederism isn't a fetish for you per se. You are right, I do not feel horny or enjoyment. Do you plan to actually become immobile one day? If so, why? Or do you have a target weight that you hope to reach? I do not. I actually have lost weight, and if I use my photos from 8 years ago and today, you can tell. So the gaining pics are actually inversed weight loss photos. I ideally would be happy and healthy at about 200 pounds. I am 300 pounds right now. Do you have or have you ever had a feeder? I've been fed about 4 times, but no active feeder. Has anyone ever paid to see you eat, in real life or on the internet? Yes. From what I have learned, a lot of people prefer you to eat messily or in demeaning ways, which I wouldn't enjoy. Such as with a funnel, on knees, with hands, and very messy and animalistic like. A lot also want to physically touch you and your belly. In your opinion, what do feeders find appealing about the lifestyle? I think a few things are why they find it appealing. As I'm asexual, I see it from an outsider perspective, not being able to feel sexual stuff. Fat people are taboo, goes against society's standards of beauty, and they like that. They like the little imperfections, and fat being one of them. Fat is sexy to them. The way it hangs, ripples, and has cellulite makes people attracted to it. Also, more places to stick their if I can say so bluntly, they've said. Total control. Someone immobile depends on them to bathe, potty, feed them, etc. It's total control. You are at the mercy of someone else. And some like to give up that control. Others like to have that much control. I've seen some twisted people who find mentally ill individuals, like those with binge eating disorder, and basically manipulate them. So it's also a hotbed of abusers, and if someone is too fat to walk, they're too fat to leave. Some enjoy changing others into their ideal versions of beauty, like bimbofication, and all other ones where someone alters how you look. I think it's like a customization. This also ties in with Hugh Cow. Got a message about that the other day, someone asking me to get cow tattoos and pierce my areas. You can make someone as fat as you want in immobilization. Eating to them is sexy. Mukbang went crazy in recent years, so I think watching people eat is a sexual act to them. Psychologically wise, this probably ties into cultures, how making sure someone is fed is making sure they're cared for and happy. I apologise, I had to learn psychology for my job, an animal behaviourist, so I can understand some aspects. They fetishise the belly. Whatever it is about a growing belly is sexy to them. The sounds, the shape, etc. The idea that people can eat whatever they want, drink whatever they want and not worry, it seems carefree and happy. Hedonism, selfishness, people find that sexy, along with laziness. I've seen many in the fetish get turned on by those specific things. Are there any misconceptions about feederism that you'd like to clear up? The main one is that feederism is not always tied in with gaining, laziness, hedonism, etc. Some people enjoy eating, sharing the food with others, and enjoying a meal, like a Thanksgiving, but not on Thanksgiving. Some people like the voyeurism aspect of people watching them eat as they enjoy it. Some are fat and love to show off their fat bodies in positive ways. Immobilization and gaining are separate aspects, and many do not want to give up their independence of walking, going outside, mobility, and overall health for the lifestyle. Anything else you'd like to add? A lot of people into it are very manipulative and dangerous. They care more for the fetish than the individual, aka they want someone eating and fat and don't care about them and their health or happiness. In the end, true immobilization is a death sentence. It is not healthy. Feederism can be, aka the food you eat, how much, etc., but many choose an unhealthy aspect of it. I think a lot like me are not into gaining, but choose to be in the communities as fat models trying to make an income and a fan base, as you can make a huge fan base. As many bigger models who do use old pics of when they were underage and skinny, but pretend they weren't underage. A lot of it is very harmful mentally as well, as they want to see women doing some condescending things, like fail to exercise. They got mad I could walk 10k steps on a treadmill and wanted me to act more like I can't walk 1k steps. So many want the unhealthy aspect where you want food and want to eat it with your face and hands and be funnel-fed cream and can't walk. So the psychology aspect is probably people who want to watch others struggle from their selfishness. I also spoke with another user, Swag Messiah. Here's my conversation with him. Would you describe yourself as a feedee? I am a feedee. Is it a fetish for you? Yes, I would say this is a fetish for me. Do you plan to become immobile one day? If I found the right person, I definitely would. Have you ever had a feeder, and if so, what was that like? I've had some online feeders, though not too much in person yet, and it was nice. Someone to buy me food and lust over me and be interested in my growing body. It was very hot, and I'd definitely like more. What do you think feeders find appealing about the lifestyle? I think they like the feeling of making someone bigger and fatter and hotter in their eyes, though in real life it would be the softness and power dynamic that comes with it. There is definitely a large power dynamic in this fetish, especially when it comes to immobility, almost akin to bondage and BDSM. Assuming you are actively trying to gain weight, are you concerned about possible health risks involved, or do you think it'd be worth it? I would worry about the health risks, but I'd try and do some damage mitigation to lessen it, and if I really had to lose weight, I'd try. Are there any misconceptions about feederism that you'd like to clear up? It's honestly not that weird of a fetish, and it's kinda more the opposite end of societal norms relating to attraction and body weight, though as of recently with the ever-growing obesity epidemic, which I hope continues lol, the weight scale has shifted and is shifting from very skinny guys or women into bigger or thick, which not too long ago wasn't that popular, and as bigger and bigger sizes become the norm, I feel as if feederism as a whole might become more normalised, though immobility will probably still be a fetish even at bigger sizes. It's mostly a power dynamic. It seems like that is attractive on top of the general feederism aspect. For example, I really want to get bigger and bigger, and obviously immobility is a side effect of that, which leads to me wanting to get big enough that I can't stop a feeder from making me even bigger, which once again is related to the power dynamic and bondage aspect. But it honestly feels nice to be big, and I'd like to be even bigger. A lot of people in the fetish just want to keep getting bigger and bigger. Some glorify the immobility aspect, and for some it's just a natural outcome of getting really big, so becoming immobile is just achieving getting the want or need to be bigger. There are definitely aspects about having someone care about you the way a feeder could and lust over you. Hopefully I'll be able to find someone someday to care for me like that and make me immobile as well. The conversations I had with both these individuals go to show that no two feedees are the same. Each have their own reasons and motivations for getting into feederism, and the goals for the future vary significantly. Feederism isn't a kink that appeals to me personally, and I do acknowledge that the lifestyle can result in serious health problems that shouldn't just be brushed under the carpet. But I think I've gained an understanding that I didn't have prior to researching for this video. And I think it's important to attempt to understand taboo interests in general, as we all have a tendency to fear the unknown, and we can't really form a valid opinion on something that we haven't taken the time to comprehend. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any other disturbing or controversial subreddits you'd like me to cover. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my patrons, whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Thursday in a new video.